The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content of these articles is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for today, Monday, the 3rd of August. Your readers today are David Hayes and
Tom Scanlon.
The first article is from the A section, the news section. It is on the first page. The title of the article is Marine Pests May Hitch a Ride in the Strait. The article is submitted by Christopher Kahn. Stalled commercial ship traffic near the Strait of Hormuz is not only a threat to oil markets and global economies. Scientists warned that the idling vessels could unleash an invasive marine superspreader event when trade resumes. The Iran war has forced a halt to more than 1,500 vessels near the strategic waterway since the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran began on February 28th. Traffic has remained restricted for months as Washington and Tehran battle over control of the vital trade route which carries 1/5 of the world's oil and natural gas supply. A new study produced by an international coalition of marine scientists warned that invasive marine organisms that have grown on the ship's hull could pose a significant threat to ecosystems across the globe when the ships reach their final destinations. If you had to sort of design a worst-case scenario, it would look like this, said Mario Tamburi. It's a perfect storm. When ships are stationary for periods of days or weeks, the submerged parts of the vessel can become colonized by microbes, algae, and other marine organisms. These organisms, when introduced to other ecosystems, can cause a wide array of consequences from outcompeting native species to damaging infrastructure to introducing pathogens harmful to marine life and sometimes to humans. Researchers say the buildup of waterborne organisms can reach rapid growth phase after about 10 days. Cargo ships in most ports pass idle for less than 2 days on average, but many ships trapped near the Strait of Hormuz have remained there for months. Compounding the threat is the fact that the ships became stalled at the start of spring, a season of growth and reproduction as waters warm. The sheer volume in the number of idle vessels and their global routes is especially concerning to the researchers. Taken together, the conditions have laid the groundwork for what scientists describe as an immense international biosecurity threat. The buildup of marine organisms on vessels, referred to as biofouling, can cause a wide array of problems, not only for marine ecosystems, but also for global shipping companies. The growth can lead ships to have more drag as they move through the water, burning extra fuel and increasing exhaust emissions. According to the International Marine Organization, biofouling wastes about 10% of all fuel used by the world's shipping fleets. That has led operators to spend billions of dollars a year to mitigate the problem, using specialized coatings on the bottom of ships and specialized cleaning operations. There are dozens of examples of invasive marine species hitchhiking on ships and threatening ecosystems around the globe. One example the researchers highlight is the invasion of the Australasian barnacle Astrominimus modatus to Western Europe during World War II. That invasion, which saw the new barnacle outcompete other native species, was linked to a New Zealand ships being held in English ports while awaiting convoy escorts. In the United States, the ropegrass hydroid grevia was introduced to the Chesapeake Bay by commercial ships about a century ago. Since then, the organism, which is native to the Indo-Pacific, has caused major problems for infrastructure, mainly by clogging power plants' cooling systems. We've been working with a nuclear power plant locally to control and manage that fouling. It's costing millions of dollars per year to keep those cooling systems clear, and there's lots of incidents like that. There's also the potential for harm to marine life and humans. There are disasters that infect things like shellfish that are suspected to have traveled along the hulls of ships. In the early 1990s, the pathogen Vibrio cholera, which causes cholera, was discovered on 5 ships docked in U.S. ports along the Gulf of Mexico. Those ships had come from Latin America, which at the time was grappling with an outbreak of cholera. After the discovery, the FDA recommended that the U.S. Coast Guard issue an advisory to shipping agents and captains requesting that ballast waters be exchanged on the high seas before ships entered U.S. ports. There are several aspects to the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz that make it unprecedented, at least in modern history. And finally, the sheer number of ships. Study authors cited at least 1,500 vessels idle near the trade route, and the length of time involved are just beginning. Tambury said, organisms that thrive in the Middle East waters, such as the Strait of Hormuz, the Gulf of Oman, and Persian Gulf, are adaptable and especially resilient as the waters experience extreme seasonal changes. The Gulf, for example, can reach 95 degrees in the summer and 60 degrees in the winter. Those organisms can withstand extremes. They're tolerant organisms, which makes them good candidates for invasions when they go to a new location. The areas most at risk are those nearby with similar conditions, such as high salinity and high temperatures. Southeast Asia and ports across India are at greater risk than most other locations, especially international hubs for commercial shipping like Singapore. The United States and North America, in general, are at lower risk because of their distance and lower levels of salinity. They are not at zero risk by any means, he said, adding that ports along the Gulf Coast are of particular concern because of their relatively high temperatures. Researchers recommend that operators and shipping companies conduct in-water cleanings to remove some of the buildup, citing the risk to ecosystems globally and the higher fuel cost. But that scenario is unlikely for most ships, given the urgency of evacuating stranded seafarers and restoring shipping movements. The researchers also cited limited capacity and constraints to operations aimed at cleaning hundreds of large commercial vessels. Ports aren't expected to have the resources to conduct large-scale cleaning operations and will likely prioritize clearing bottlenecks. Given these challenges, the researchers recommended that crews estimate the buildup of marine organisms before departing, so authorities can evaluate risks. They also recommend that nearby ports monitor for early detection using low-cost, rapid assessments. The researchers also call for governments, the maritime industry, and others to strengthen biofouling management. While the human and economic consequences of events like the war in the Middle East will always remain the highest priority, ecological impacts cannot be overlooked. And finally, looking ahead, Tambury said, the risks from biofouling are expected to only increase as climate change leads to warmer ocean temperatures. There could be areas where native organisms are on the edge of what they can tolerate because they're not adapted to warmer waters, he said. Now perhaps these invaders have a better chance of colonizing and outcompeting the native species.
Our next article is titled Sweater Company Threads in Politics. Its Give a Damn line aims to make sass chic. The author is Jay Stahl. When Rachel Haruska McPherson founded her New York clothing company a decade ago, she didn't imagine celebrities like Oprah Winfrey and Martha Stewart would be donning her sweaters. McPherson also didn't expect her brand, Lingua Franca, which produces hand-stitched cashmere sweaters made by women, to become political. That happened too. McPherson has sewn her way into an empire with the help of the company's most famous collection, its Give a Damn line, a series of sassy pullovers bearing progressive slogans that throw shade at President Donald Trump's administration. The Clipper offerings styled in lowercase lettering include Melt Ice, I Like My Ice Crushed, and Impeach Him. In recent years, McPherson's company has grown beyond its political roots. Lingua Franca launched ready-to-wear in 2020, and the brand boasts a 10,000 square foot workshop in New York City's Garment District. The bulk of the company's sales come from customizable sweaters. Lingua Franca, founded in September of 2016, 2 months before Trump won his first term, has experienced a homecoming. His brands reckon with politics during his second term. We've kind of tamped down the politics as we've grown, but obviously this is the 250th year of our country, and I think a lot of things were happening, and so felt it natural. McPherson, age 43, told USA Today. Stewart has been photographed in Give a Damn sweaters, which run from $150 to $380. Screen star Connie Britton was styled in the brand's Black Poverty is Sexist sweater for the 2018 Golden Globes. McPherson, a Nebraska native, was raised in Lincoln, spent childhood summers on her family farm with her cousin and grandparents. After attending Pius X High School, a prestigious Catholic institution in her hometown, and Creighton University in Omaha, she moved to New York in 2005 to pursue her dreams beyond the prairie. 2008, McPherson co-founded Guest of a Guest, a popular lifestyle site about the gilded lives of New York's high society. She married hospitality titan Sean McPherson in 2011, and the pair welcomed 2 sons, Maxwell and then Dashiell. After Dash's birth in 2016, McPherson experienced an extreme bout of postpartum anxiety and depression. I was working nonstop and trying to make a sense of the digital landscape when everything was changing and really kind of just sunk into a deep black hole. McPherson said she went to a therapist and is now medicated with Lexapro, a common antidepressant. To heal, the founder's therapist recommended she perform manual tasks because she was often online, attached to her phone and plugged into the constant news cycle. On a visit to Montauk, a luxe hamlet in the Hamptons where her family vacations, McPherson passed a Joann fabric store. Her paternal grandmother, Rita, had taught her how to embroider at the family farm. We used to spend summers there with my cousins, and I just remember it being one of my happiest times in my life. McPherson said she hadn't stitched in 20 years, but went to the store to purchase needles and thread. Lingua Franca's first line was a political line of 2,000 sweaters sold by Net-a-Porter, the luxury fashion site. McPherson designed a collection inspired by her muse and mother-in-law, Janet McPherson, a pioneer in women's surfing. McPherson, who rode waves in her 80s, donned a Lingua Franca outlaw sweater in the photo that accompanies her New York Times obituary. After Trump was elected, McPherson took a photo of her ode to Barack Obama in an embroidered sweater and posted the photo on Instagram. It went totally viral, McPherson wrote in a Business Insider essay. Garment was a gift for Anna Carter, who runs a digital telegram company along with her husband, former Vanity Fair editor Graydon Carter. The brand's celebrity fans include Candice Bergen, Jamie Lee Curtis, Katie Couric, Andy Cohen, America Ferrera, Reese Witherspoon, Jane Fonda, Laura Dern, and Lupita Nyong'o. Lingua Franca also triggered high-profile backlash. McPherson drew criticism from the company's anti-ice sweaters. A retailer dropped her brand in the wake of that controversy. But the most outspoken critics of McPherson's line are disgruntled about the sweater's cost. In 2018, she told The Hollywood Reporter that the biggest criticism we get is the price point. In an interview with USA Today, she addressed the question again. McPherson called their own experience as a Midwestern adjusting to East Coast prices. When her cousins from Kansas City, Missouri came to visit recently, she took them to Montauk and brought them into the high-end market, Round Swamp Farm. The Hamptons, hotspots believed by culinary icon Ina Garten and hated by Bethany Frankel after the former Real Housewives of New York star, said the store didn't give her credit for help in making it famous. The cost of goods is relative, McPherson said, but added that it's important to acknowledge and explain what people pay for. It's something that we biggest challenge because we want to feel inclusive, McPherson said. We want to bring people into our community and our conversation. We also want to both maintain our quality, the dignity of workers that work for us, who all have full benefits and salaried positions, and so it's hard to do that. Lingua Franca totaled nearly $2 million in charitable giving, and its factories in Portugal and Peru are pre-screened for best practices, McPherson said. The clothing company partnered with NPR and PBS after public media saw $1 billion in fund cuts last year among pressure from congressional Republicans in the Trump administration. The pricing is relative because of the product's ethically sourced, hand-stitched domestic production, said Laurie Poloni Stollinger, an expert on the politics of fashion. Poloni Stollinger was also dean of the University of Arizona College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, added, I don't think it's outrageously priced, but she said she wouldn't be likely to purchase a sweater at that rate. The Give a Damn collection is an elevated political t-shirt, according to Karen Kidrowski, an Iowa State professor who explores the intersection of fashion and politics. Kidrowski said sweaters have filled a niche community in a political statement with the pleasure point and seasonality of cashmere. It does send sort of a multi-layered message about politics, but then also about personal status as well, Kidrowski said. Millions of people wear T-shirts with political messaging, but McPherson's chic use of cashmere also communicates wealth to potential customers. Kidrowski said McPherson said she hears from customers pass down sweaters to their daughter, something she appreciates, given the throwaway nature of fashion. Other companies have found success by producing political garb. T-shirts by Raygun, a clothing company based in Des Moines, boasts locations across the Midwest, such as Chicago, McPherson's home of Lincoln, Nebraska, Kansas City, and Madison, Wisconsin. Raygun shirts, which feature slogans like America needs lesbian farmers, are ethically made and typically retail for less than $30. Trump fans favor his red Make America Great Again hats, which are available online in his official store for $55. In New York, McPherson wants to continue building a community for Lingua Franca fans who can't afford the company's products. The company's West Village retail store, a social media and other popular Substack newsletter, Loose Threads. And lastly, McPherson says she wants to give something more, to build a timeless brand that extends beyond the politics of give a damn.
You are listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 19 minutes past the hour. The following article is a continuation of the review of the A section. The title of the article is Raising Their Voices. Independent voters and key states are revealing what moves the needle for them. The article is written by Terry Collins. John Marvin lives in Florida. Sandy Hebley resides in Texas, and Sophie Gelling calls Pennsylvania her home. They live in different corners of the nation, but they have one thing in common. They're all independent voters, weighing their options, figuring out what impact they might have on key races in the crucial midterm elections. These voters are a fulcrum on which the middle shifts in every race. Their vote may never be as important, and about 4 in 10 registered U.S. voters say they are independent, according to a recent poll by Gallup. Those findings are intriguing, especially in a polarized nation with a president who seeks to enact the Save America Act, which would jeopardize voter rights, according to John Opdyke. A lot of people are noticing the rise of independent voters, Opdyke says. He explained that fewer people want to be tied to the traditional parties and more politicians are taking notice. A snapshot shows that independent voters shifted between 8 and 11 percentage points toward Donald Trump in 2024, likely determining the outcome of the election, according to the Independent Center. The Independent Center also said 43 congressional races were decided by 5% or less, also possibly determined by independent voters. And 34% of the 2024 electorate identified as independent, about as many as who said they were Republicans, according to the Independent Center. Notably, independents made up more of the voting population than Democrats at 32%. Sophie Gelling, 27, is an independent voter in Pennsylvania who advocates for open primaries. With the midterms fewer than 100 days away, several tight races are expected as Republicans try to maintain their slim majorities to help push Donald Trump's agenda in the House and Senate. Republicans and Democrats alike will have to appeal to independents nationwide to win. During that time, Marvin, who can't vote in Florida's upcoming primary, will probably have to choose between U.S. Representative Byron Donalds, a Trump-endorsed Republican, and Democrat Donald Jolly. In Texas, Hebley's general election vote could determine a close U.S. Senate contest between Democratic State Representative James Tallarico and Republican and Trump ally Ken Paxton. Meanwhile, in Pennsylvania, Geller will be factoring in the impact of her vote in Senate and House races on which party, and more pertinent, which agenda, holds power in Congress. Independents have become the ultimate swing voters. If they can't collectively agree on a viable third-party candidate to support, they will be looking intently for the one who best backs their views. I think that the problem with swing is it's so binary in America. Like your options are really limited to, do I do this or do I do that? So you find independents kind of going back and forth because they look at, oh my God, the Democrats are screwing up. How do I send them a message? Well, I vote Republican. Oh, the Republicans just screwed the pooch. What do I do? Well, I have to vote Democrat. It's not a perfect way to make yourself heard, but in America, it's kind of like the only way right now. November can't come quickly enough for John Marvin, who hates the idea of sitting on the sidelines for any election, even if the names on the ballot don't exactly appeal to him. But the married father of 2 adult children who lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, is opting to do just that because his Deep Red State's August 18th primary uses a closed primary system in which only registered members of a political party are permitted to vote. And Marvin, who speaks readily about his desire for open primaries, has no interest in becoming a Republican or a Democrat. He feels, however, that primaries have become more crucial in such politically polarizing times. Tax dollars pay for these elections. The recently retired education administrator said, "I feel like I'm an outsider looking in. I have a constitutional right to make my voice heard, and I shouldn't be forced to associate with either of those parties in one of the most consequential midterm elections of this century. I believe independents now represent the plurality of the American electorate, but we're still being squeezed out of the process." Marvin, 63, said he has considered himself an independent for most of his adult life, as he never felt particularly comfortable with either major political party. He has voted for candidates from both parties, choosing ones he thinks have the best interest of America at heart. "I just don't like the constant fighting. I get so befuddled when the debates become shouting matches on even the simplest of issues, to the point where nothing gets done. It's so frustrating. So much time and money are being wasted." When he moved to Florida from Massachusetts more than 20 years ago for a job, Marvin said it felt more like a purple state. Now he thinks it has become staunchly red, led by the current GOP governor and former presidential candidate Ron DeSantis. Florida's Secretary of State and Attorney General are Republicans, and the party holds the majority in both chambers of the state legislature. Although not personally a fan of DeSantis, Marvin acknowledges the governor's popularity across the state and his ability to get the big things done. He's been pretty effective on hurricane response and balancing the state budget, and I guess that has trickled-down effect on voting for Republicans. With him now being term limited, I wonder if Florida just might be more open to a Democratic governor or someone more willing to work across party lines. Though he acknowledges DeSantis has found some common ground with Democrats on the environment and disaster relief, Marvin hasn't been crazy about the governor's divisive stances on education and immigration or his aggressive push to redistrict congressional maps to favor Republicans. He doesn't like that DeSantis quietly passed a law eliminating ranked choice voting, and that Florida passed a Republican-backed law last year that places severe new restrictions on ballot initiatives. Several groups filed suit and challenged the law, arguing it violates First Amendment rights. After a 2-month trial, a federal judge in April sided with the state against those groups seeking to amend Florida's constitution. Despite his concerns, Marvin said he's not going to relocate. He is determined to make his vote and others' votes count. He's keeping a very close eye on the primary race for governor to see which Republican candidate, the Trump-endorsed Donalds or Lieutenant Governor J.E. Collins, emerges, and which Democratic candidate, including frontrunner Jolly, the former GOP lawmaker, will prevail against 5 other challengers. Marvin also has an eye on Florida's key Senate primary and will be watching to see if GOP incumbent Ashley Moody has an edge over 3 other candidates and who will fare best in the Democratic race between Alexander Vindman, the former National Security Council Director for European Affairs, and Florida State Representative Angie Moore. He plans to be heavily engaged for November's general election. "I'm going to look at all the players and races carefully with a fine-tooth comb. And now that I'm retired, I'm going to look at them even more intensely and serve as a conduit of sorts for others who may not know the issues." As a longtime independent voter, Sandy Hebley can't recall if she has ever voted a straight ballot for one political party. She said it's not in her DNA. "I've always prided myself in making my own decisions," said the 77-year-old retired hospice nurse from Dallas. "It's not unusual for me to vote for a Democrat, a Republican, and an independent all on the same ballot. I tend to think that I'm voting for the best candidate regardless of their affiliation." Hebley remembers voting in 1980 for presidential longshot John Anderson, a GOP congressman from Illinois, who fled his party to run as an independent against incumbent Democrat Jimmy Carter and Republican challenger Ronald Reagan. She thought Anderson, a World War II vet and a 10-term congressman who was among the first GOP lawmakers to call for President Richard Nixon's resignation when the Watergate scandal widened, became more moderate with his views. Hebley liked how Anderson, who finished a different third with 7% of the vote, took on both candidates and thought the two-party political system was broken. To this day, I have never felt like I wasted my vote. I went with my gut. I always do, Hebley said. Now the married mother of 2 adult children has to make another choice, as her vote could help tip the balance in a clash between upstart Democrat Tallarico, 37, and Republican Paxton, 63, over which party will control the U.S. Senate. Tipping her hand, Hebley said she is leaning towards Tallarico and his messages about lowering the cost of living, making health care more affordable, boosting school funding, and raising the minimum wage. She doesn't care for Paxton, the Texas Attorney General, who was indicted and impeached on securities fraud charges but not convicted. She is eager to see whether the highly polarized candidates will agree to debate, a face-off that would draw national attention. She's also upset with Governor Greg Abbott's controversial decision last year to redraw the state's congressional map after Trump urged Texas Republicans to flip 5 U.S. House seats ahead of the midterms. The new map was signed into law, and the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the newly redrawn districts in April. The GOP move in Texas sparked similar redistricting actions from both parties in other states. I think a lot is on the line. Again, Hebley sighs. The future of our country is at stake. Hebley is unwavering in her determination to ensure voting rights are protected. In 2020, at the height of the pandemic, she became a poll worker in Dallas County, figuring she could assist voters who were afraid to cast their ballot and provide some infection control as a nurse in the process. Now she's worried voters may be scared of something else, preventing them from voting. I'm worried the state will send National Guard troops or ICE agents to try to intimidate voters, but I'm not going to let that stop me from trying to help them. I want to make sure everyone has a chance to vote. That also includes possibly voting for Mike Collier, who is running as an independent candidate for Texas Lieutenant Governor after losing campaigns for the post in 2018 and 2022 when he ran as a Democrat. The problem is, Collier needs to get more than 81,000 signatures to get his name on the ballot in November. Collier has filed a federal lawsuit challenging the state's ballot access laws, arguing they violate the constitutional rights of independent candidates and voters. A decision is pending. I think there are more obstacles to voting to run for office than I've ever seen before, Hebley said. There's always a fight. Hebley is also proud to say she's a member of the League of Women Voters and Braver Angels, the nonpartisan nonprofit that hosts cross-party discussions, debates, and workshops to promote political depolarization between conservative and liberal voters. Though she has helped people register to vote for decades, Hebley said she's struggling with the fact that she hasn't been able to persuade one special person, her 21-year-old eldest grandson, to exercise his right to vote. I'm heartbroken. It's so sad, she said, her voice trailing off a bit. He said, "Don't even talk to me about it. The candidates are all crooks." I told him they all aren't, and that it might be better to have a say on which crook is worse than the other. I tried to let that simmer in his brain. He's a good young man, and I think he will come around. It may not happen in November, but I've planted the seed, and hopefully it will germinate. Every vote counts. Sophie Jelling grew up in a family of independent voters in Westchester, Pennsylvania, about 25 miles west of Philadelphia. Yet she registered as a Democrat when she voted and served as a poll worker in her hometown during her first election in 2016. However, Jelling noticed that not everyone was allowed to vote. She felt awful turning away independent voters who were unaware of the state's closed primary system. The memory stayed with her. Fast forward almost 10 years, and Jelling, who lives in Philadelphia, is now a registered independent voter fighting for open primaries. She's inspired that 2 states, Nebraska and New Mexico, changed their primary systems to allow all registered voters to participate in the past year. Meanwhile, 17 other states have closed or partially closed primaries. I decided that it was important for me to be an outspoken advocate for voter independence, said Jelling. The owner of small events organizing business called I Want, Gelling noted she's among a record 56% of Gen Z adults Gallup says identify politically as independents or unaffiliated with either major party. The Independent Center, the Washington, D.C.-based voter advocacy nonprofit, landed a similar finding. 52% of Gen Z and millennials identify as politically independent. Only 7% of younger independent voters say they're locked into voting for a major party, compared with 67% of older voters, the center found. Jelling said that shows a genuine dissatisfaction with the more traditional hardline 2-party system she thinks is stuck in its ways. In July, Trump refused to sign a landmark affordable housing bill, complaining that Congress has not taken action to overhaul elections under the Save America Act. Being an independent to me means progress, even though there are lines we need to work with to change rules for those who feel locked out. It's a civil rights issue, a voting rights issue. But independent voters face many challenges beyond being seen, heard, and having their vote counts, said Anthony Fowler, a political science professor at the University of Chicago. Fowler, who specializes in political polarization, said one growing challenge is that the major parties have now become more nationalized, offering more consistently polarized platforms in local elections and races across districts and states. But moderates and independent voters are more influential on elections than they realize, Fowler said. Instead of blind party loyalty, they are highly swayed by the qualities of a particular candidate's ideologies and willing to switch their votes between parties. Jelling believes that every registered voter, no matter their political party, should be allowed to vote. That's one reason she organized a demonstration calling for open primaries near a polling site at the Community College of Philadelphia on May 19th, Pennsylvania's primary day. She believes independent voters will have a vital role in determining outcomes in November, ranging from the governor's races to Senate and House contests that could change the power structure in Congress. I feel very lucky to have a very robust, independent-minded community in a purple state, Jelling said. Independence paving the way for more people to vote is what brought me in and what will keep me here. The system can't shut us out. Finally, I'm worried the state will send National Guard troops or ICE agents to try to intimidate voters, but I'm not going to let that stop me.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 38 minutes after the hour. This means we move to the money section, and our first article is titled COVID-19 Tax Refund at Risk After Court Ruling. The author is Medora Lee. The potential for a big COVID-era tax refund may just have gotten a haircut in the last court ruling that touches on the subject, according to lawyers. A federal tax court judge ruled last week in Brown v. Commissioner that only deadline-related, not accuracy-related penalties during the COVID-19 pandemic year qualify for the protections of Internal Revenue Code Section 7508A, the law used to allow the government to delay tax deadlines, stop penalty fees, and pause interest during emergencies like the 3.5-year pandemic. If the ruling holds, COVID-related refund and abatement claims millions of Americans may have filed for July 10th could be subject to this more limited interpretation by the IRS and see either smaller or no refunds. However, lawyers warn this setback may only be temporary and America should hang on. Appellate courts will have the final say, wrote Matthew Lee, partner at Fox Rothschild. Final answers may take several years. Section 7508A is meant to provide relief to taxpayers in times of crisis by giving the IRS the authority to temporarily halt tax deadlines. Affected individuals and businesses do not have to face financial penalties for late filings or payments. The scope of relief is what various courts are deciding, lawyers said. Kwong versus United States late last year kicked off the possibility the IRS would owe tens of millions of Americans COVID-era refunds. The judge in that court of federal claims case said the IRS couldn't assess underpayment interest, failure to pay penalties, and failure to file penalties during the federal COVID-19 health emergency and disaster. And the time to file refund claims in United States tax court petitions was also suspended. The IRS had tried to limit the period Section 7508A would apply to during the pandemic, but the Kwong case invalidated that attempt and said the halt to the tax deadlines extended through the end of the pandemic. Additionally, not only were filing deadlines postponed, but interest and penalties couldn't accrue, and the statute of limitations for claiming credits or refunds was suspended. Government's appealing this ruling. The latest Bowen ruling didn't limit the time period, but it narrowed the types of acceptable claims to only deadline-related ones, Lee said. Key questions about the breadth of Section 7508A relief remain unresolved, he said. For now, Americans should stay the course, lawyers say. Any taxpayer, including individuals, small businesses, large corporations, estates, and trusts, could still be eligible for a refund or abatement. National Taxpayer Advocate Aaron Collins has said. Collins heads the Taxpayer Advocate Service. The issue reaches taxpayers with obligations related to income, employment, estate, gift, and excise taxes, she said. It also affects taxpayers who file late international information returns, which can result in significant penalties even where no tax is due. However, Americans will have to stay patient while the process is not known for expediency. So we expect it will take a few years for the courts to sort out these issues, Lee said. Courts also have decided with penalties originally assessed before pandemic relief period and the related interests are subject to additional penalty and interest accrual during the pandemic relief period, experts say. Finally, the final answer will be determined by the courts of appeals and perhaps the Supreme Court, Lee said.
You are listening to a reading from articles from the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time now is 43 minutes after the hour. The next article is also from the Money section. It is titled, Immigration Looms Very Large Over the Economy. The article is submitted by Jessica Gunn. For years, employers from Florida to Ohio have relied on immigrants taking part of a humanitarian program to staff hard-to-fill job openings for construction workers and home health aides. Now, they warn, the Trump administration's sweeping crackdown on immigration is threatening that labor pool. More than 300,000 Haitian immigrants are set to lose their temporary protected status that allows them to live and work in the United States. The Supreme Court last month cleared the way for Haitians who sought sanctuary in the United States after natural disasters and political unrest in the Caribbean island nation to lose that protection. The ruling also covers about 6,000 people from Syria, which endured a devastating civil war from 2011 to 2024. Immigration rights groups expect the Trump administration will also end TPS for immigrants from other countries. The T in TPS stands for temporary. James Percival, General Counsel of the Department of Homeland Security, said last month on Fox News, "It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here." Trump's reforms worry Mark Zandel. The chief economist at Moody's Analytics says immigrants are a key ingredient in the American economy's secret sauce. More workers filling jobs and spending money spurs economic expansion, creating more jobs. The highly restrictive immigration policies are a significant headwind to economic growth and a tailwind to the uncomfortably high inflation. Many industries are struggling to replace immigrant workers who are leaving the workforce, most notably agriculture, construction, manufacturing, transportation, leisure and hospitality, and personal services. This is limiting the ability of these industries to expand and raising their costs and thus inflation. The potential loss of workers in key industries has set off alarm bells in the business community. Trade groups have mobilized, warning of looming economic disruptions in industries already facing chronic labor shortages. Some 830,000 TPS recipients are part of the U.S. labor force, principally in construction, retail and wholesale, leisure and hospitality, transportation and business services, according to a recent estimate from pro-immigration think tank FWS. The sudden loss of Haitian-born workers would be especially acute in healthcare and caregiving occupations and could affect the delivery of care and other essential services in nursing homes and other facilities, the Chamber of Commerce warned. With 50 to 75 job openings at any one time, Goodwin Living President and Alexandria, Virginia nonprofit that provides health care, hospice, and housing services to about 5,000 older adults is always on the lookout for qualified workers, from nursing assistants to housekeepers. Of Goodwin Living's 1,500 employees, 70% hail from foreign countries. As a result of the White House's immigration reforms, the organization has hemorrhaged 7 staff members in the last couple years, according to CEO Robert Liebrick. When you lose people who are doing great work, it's really hard to find replacements for them. And even when you do, those replacements don't come with the same knowledge and developed relationships that the people have been with us had. He says living the workforce version of Jenga, the more wooden blocks you pull, the greater risk the whole structure will collapse. The loss of the existing labor pool, just as demand from the nation's aging population is rising, will make it harder for seniors to get care and will drive up the cost of that care. At a time where we actually need more hands, we're pulling away these pieces and taking away parts which would give us more hands. Every American has a vested interest in having more capable hands available. Rebecca Shea, CEO of the American Business Immigration Coalition, said fewer workers will weaken the industry like Liebrick's already struggling to keep pace with demand. TPS recipients account for 15% of non-citizen health care workers. Our goal is to strengthen the U.S. economy. We should be keeping vetted, working authorized people on the job, not creating chaos for employers, workers, and the communities that depend on them. Established by Congress in 1990, TPS gives temporary protection to people who don't feel safe returning to countries plagued by disaster or armed conflict, such as El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. President Barack Obama granted this status to Haitians in 2010 after an earthquake devastated their island. Trump unsuccessfully tried to end TPS during his first term. It was then extended under the Biden administration. When Trump returned to office last year, he moved to end the TPS status of about 1.3 million immigrants from 17 countries legally living in the United States under the program as part of his immigration reforms that he says are critical to securing the livelihood of U.S.-born workers. The White House said in a recent economic report that record flows of illegal immigrants depressed wages for Americans, inflated the demand for housing, and drained the welfare system. Critics argue a program offering short-term amnesty in emergency situations has expanded beyond its original intent. Senator Eric Schmitt, Republican of Missouri, recently called TPS a one-way racket towards permanent mass migration. That resulting migration is a drain on public resources and on taxpayers, they say. The Trump administration is right to let these overused TPS programs expire as originally intended. Daniel West, Director of Government Relations for Heritage Action, said. Some Republicans don't agree. Mike DeWine, the Republican governor of Ohio, told CBS that deporting Haitian immigrants, thousands of whom live in his state, is a mistake that will kill jobs and damage the local economy. These are people who have helped Springfield really come back, DeWine said of Haitians who have filled jobs and opened businesses in his hometown. The Haitians who are living there and employed there, they came there to work, and they came there because there were jobs that were not being filled by other people. Broadly speaking, economists say they don't anticipate widespread economic reverberations, including labor shortages. The truth is, even with all the TPS termination and deportations, we are talking about fewer than 1 million people losing work authorization or being deported from inside the U.S., cumulatively since the start of the Trump administration. This is out of a labor force of nearly 170 million people, said Daniel DiMartino, a fellow at the Manhattan Institute who researches immigration. So any labor market impact of immigration is very limited and only concentrated in more affected industries that employ illegal immigrants in specific areas, such as the metro Miami area. How limited and how concentrated is a matter of some debate. A group of economics told the Supreme Court in April that deporting immigrant workers does not lift wages or provide meaningful benefits to American workers. In fact, they said, eliminating the TPS program could result in the loss of more than 600,000 American jobs in 4 years. TPS recipients are homeowners and taxpayers who are overwhelmingly employed, pay billions annually in taxes, and fill essential roles in healthcare, construction, transportation, and food production, the amicus brief said. The brief cites research that says deporting TPS recipients would reduce job opportunities for U.S. workers. In fact, a recent study showed that a large and sudden increase in deportation causes a substantial reduction in the employment of American workers because fewer new businesses open and more existing businesses close. The construction industry has seen the largest drop in employment, according to Elizabeth Cox of the University of Colorado Boulder. Service sector jobs in auto repair shops, commercial machinery repair shops, nail salons, and dry cleaning businesses have also recorded substantial declines. We see that there has been a decline in employment for both immigrants, authorized and unauthorized, and U.S.-born workers in response to the heightened ICE activity from 2025. Importantly, there's also no evidence that wages have increased in response to immigration enforcement for either of these groups. This is largely counter to the narrative we often see in the media that deportations will create better job opportunities for U.S.-born workers. The evidence instead suggests that enforcement has hurt the labor market by decreasing employment with no change to wages. Communities with large TPS populations will feel the effects most sharply, from higher prices and longer waits for home repairs and remodels to scarcer care options for young children or aging parents, said Stan Voiger, an economist with the American Enterprise Institute. And finally, a recent study from economists at the University of Utah's Eccles School of Business found that increased deportation caused nearly 2,000 fewer homes to be built per state per year, resulting in an 18% increase in new home prices. When you suddenly reduce immigration, a lot of you suddenly deport a lot of people. It doesn't make people's lives enormously better. It really is not an economic boom for the workers who remain.
This next article, and last article I believe for this hour, Gen Z and millennials are buying timeshares. Many are finding value in the financial investment. The author is Kathleen Wong. First major investment for Megan and Crosby Brackus as a young married couple was not a house or car payment, it was a timeshare. The North Carolina residents made the purchase in 2023 after crunching the numbers. As a photographer-videographer duo who not only love to travel but also do it for work, seemed to make financial sense. They're tired of spending money on hotels and vacation rentals that didn't seem worth it. Crosby also had grown up traveling and staying in timeshares owned by his friends' parents. One of our family values is exploring, seeing the world, and really molding that for our family, he told USA Today. As a young couple who didn't quite have kids yet, this was an investment we were excited to make for a lifetime. Couples on the cusp between Gen Z and millennial. They are part of a growing number of young Americans finding value in financial investment of a timeshare, according to the 2026 U.S. Shared Vacation Ownership Report. Based on nearly 5,300 interviews with timeshare owners between January and February, the report found millennials make up half of all timeshare owners. The timeshare often hefty cost and lifetime commitment isn't for everyone, but it's appealing to younger generations who prioritize travel in their budgets and game the system to work for their dream trips. Everybody knows how they want to spend their money. Said Megan, we may be the ones traveling the world, but you aren't the ones with the nicest cars, and I don't get my nails done or hair done often. So I think it's just a shift in priorities. Driving some of the allure for younger travelers is how the timeshare industry has evolved over recent decades. Instead of fixed weeks, most companies now operate on point system, similar to airline miles. Flexibility of the points really started to turn the industry, started to really open it up to really the Gen Z, Millennial, and Gen X demographic, said Mike Fazzi, president of Marriott Vacations. The industry also added more experiential offerings like culinary experiences or exclusive events to timeshare owners. In the report, Gen Z owners said they're most drawn to amenities like activities and food and beverage, including room service. You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for the third day of August on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are Tom Scanlon and
David Hayes.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers remain Tom Scanlon and,
David Hayes.
as always, we turn to the sports section, and our first article is on Major League Baseball. Dodgers winning mind games. Two-time series champs get Skubal in trade. Crazy to say it, but Matt Beattie and Michael Busch have ruined baseball. Who are they, you might ask? Oh, just a couple of dudes with pretty left-handed swings who found their way to the Los Angeles Dodgers organization, benefited from their tutelage, were traded to the San Diego Padres and Chicago Cubs for a couple of much younger players in River Ryan and Zahir Hope, respectively. Who are they, you might ask? Perhaps you know of Ryan and Hope by now, or as they could call him in the Motor City, Ryan's Hope. Ryan and Hope and a young man named Brady Smith were traded by the Dodgers to the Detroit Tigers late in the evening of August 1st. The Dodgers received the greatest left-hand pitcher since Clayton Kershaw. Tarik Skubal is a Dodger and perhaps more significantly the avatar for all that is wrong with baseball. He and his new team, the Whipping Boys, for a looming lockout whether or not LA wins seemingly inevitable third consecutive World Series title. It almost doesn't matter now. The odds just get increasingly longer that an Atlanta or Philly or Milwaukee will upset the Dodgers in the National League playoffs. As for the dozen-plus dregs that might emerge from the American League quagmire, get over 500 and then maybe we can talk about a World Series. Yet whether or not the Dodgers hoist the piece of metal come October, the narrative is well established that they are buying championships, and their methods are as potentially nefarious as those of their kingpin, that no one else stands a chance because of all that money. Which simply isn't true. Well, some of it is. The more accurate truth, the Dodgers are kicking everyone's behinds in every facet of the game: drafting, player development, scouting, which includes assessing internal talent, and providing a workplace players want to be. And they probably just got over the Detroit Tigers in the same manner they got over on the Cubs and Padres to acquire Hope and Ryan, who along with Smith stood on each other's shoulders in a trench coat and convinced the Tigers that this was sufficiently equal to Tarik Skubal. Not to denigrate the players headed to Detroit, Ryan had roared back from Tommy John surgery in August of 2024, more muscular and now 8 starts into a strong stint at Class AAA Oklahoma City. He could impact the Tigers' rotation next spring, if not sooner. Hope, age 21, is built like a running back, as MLB Pipeline puts it. He has 23 homers and 8.99 OPS at AA Tulsa. But swing and miss concerns exist. He has a 25% strikeout rate. Smith, a third-round pick from 2023, just got promoted to High A. He struck out 14.9 batters per 9 innings in his brief minor league career. But it's hard to believe Detroit couldn't have aimed higher. Quite possible the Tigers rate Hope higher than other Dodgers outfielder prospects. Player evaluation is insanely subjective. Yet why not hold out for Josu De Paula, a consensus top 4 overall prospect, or Mike Sirota, top 15, instead of or in addition to Hope, who ranks closer to 25 or 30 overall, particularly since they pulled the trigger nearly 2 days before the trade deadline. The other problem for Detroit, to borrow a phrase that's been beaten to death by New Age baseball sorts, will these young men become the best versions of themselves in the Detroit system? Nothing against the Tigers, but probably not to the extent they would as Dodgers, which brings us back to Beattie and Busch. Beattie was the 12th round pick out of Belmont College in 2015. He is a solid contributor on 2019-21 Dodgers teams, posting a .363 OBP in 120 games 2021. Then the Dodgers traded him to San Diego for Ryan and Beatty promptly batted .093. Bush's path was a little more normal, 31st pick overall in 2019. Brief major league debut, 2023. He was expendable because the Dodgers signed Freddie Freeman for relative pennies on the dollar once Atlanta deemed him replaceable. So Bush was traded for Hope and pitcher Jackson Ferris, 2024, and Bush has been pretty good as a Cub, smacking 34 homers last year, although he's only slightly better than a league average hitter this year. Point is, the Dodgers got him back the first round, developed him into a consensus top 50 prospect, and used him to plant a trade tree that eventually branched out to Skubal. Not to bum the Tigers out, but in Andrew Friedman era, the Dodgers tended not to get burned with their headline deals. Exactly 24 hours before the Dodgers acquired Skubal, Baltimore Orioles quietly traded Dean Kramer and his 6.5 ERA to the Minnesota Twins. That closed the book on a 2018 deal, which the Dodgers got Manny Machado and a trip to the World Series, and the Orioles got Ryland Bannon, Yusniel Diaz, Brevik Valera, Zach Pop, and Kremer, the lone playable asset. Perhaps you remember Willie Calhoun, dealt in 2017 to acquire Yu Darvish, who helped them to the World Series. You'd think dealing for Max Scherzer and Trea Turner in their prime might help you trade partner reboots this Tigers organization. Yet the Washington Nationals received adequate catcher Keibert Ruiz, ranked higher than as a prospect than any catcher named Will Smith, and often injured pitcher Josiah Gray. Sure, the Dodgers aren't perfect and not necessarily out to destroy the trading partner. Manuel Vargas has developed into an all-star third baseman after he was acquired in a deal for Tommy Edman 2024. Yordan Alvarez for Josh Fields and O'Neill Cruz for Tony Watson were massive misses, though both were teenagers at the time. None of this augurs well for the Tigers. Don't let the talk of controllable assets and the need to reboot the system fool you. Tigers simply forfeited a chance at a playoff berth and possible World Series. Sure, it's possible they get there anyway. AL is that bad, and the Central eminently winnable. And finally, now Skubal's a Dodger, not because they lavish money on him, but because the Tigers choose to send him there, and they believe they had the most offer in return. Funny how it always seems to work out that way.
The next article is also from the sports section. It is titled, "The Protect College Sports Act is Gaining Some Momentum." The article is written by John Bryce. White House phone calls, talks with NCAA leadership in every major member conference. A day that started with bill co-sponsors and their staffs already working the phones shortly after 7 a.m. on July 31st ended with arguably the most significant step to date for the Protect College Sports Act. Facing stiff headwinds to keep alive hope of a U.S. Senate floor vote before recess on August 7th, Senators Maria Cantwell, Democrat from Washington, Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas, and Eric Schmidt, Republican from Missouri, specifically held a litany of conversations with college athletics' top power brokers, mostly notably Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti, as well as the SEC's Greg Sankey. Schmidt, who late Friday spoke exclusively to the USA Today Sports, peeled back the layers of the day and how the last 2 weeks helped resuscitate the Protect College Sports Act that had nearly been left in the dustbin. I mean, we've spent the entirety of the week, July 20th through the 24th, negotiating with Senator Cantwell, Cruz, and myself and staff. It was pretty intense, said Schmidt, who played football at Truman State. 7 to 8 hours a day on it, kind of in the middle of all the other stuff we're doing in the Senate. I talked to the president late Friday night, after we got with the SEC and Big Ten. He's very happy. It's a priority for him. But yeah, it started pretty early and it was nonstop. Here's how it unfolded. Early in the week, USA Today Sports obtained a copy of the 12 major concessions being workshopped to garner Big Ten and SEC support. 8 of the 12, per 3 people with direct knowledge of the Senate Commerce Committee's work on the act, were granted anonymity due to sensitive nature of deliberations, were deemed full concessions. By Wednesday, in continued conversations with people on Capitol Hill, USA Today Sports learned more revisions had been made, but optimism had dwindled. Major concessions were made overnight. A person directly involved said, "At this point, with every passing minute, odds are slimmer that we can move the bill before the August recess. We've been working night and day to make the revisions the Big Ten and SEC said they needed to publicly support the bill. We need an answer. This wasn't a superficial deadline." Schmidt echoed those sentiments. Coming out of committee, my feeling was that was not going to be a finished product, that this was, we needed to have more voices on the table, he said, and clearly, the conferences and the breadth of interest that they spoke to, it was going to be important in trying to get as much support as we could. And they had issues. We tried to address those. I felt like we had a good place on Thursday. And then, it was it didn't go as I had hoped. But I'm just not wired to quit. Maybe that's the former student athlete in me. First, on Friday night, the Big Ten conducted a vote with its member institutions, presidents, and athletics leadership. It voted yes. At 9:58 p.m., the Big Ten and SEC issued a joint statement of support. What people were really focused on was the revenue de facto salary cap. If you're going to go through this, because we've got all the really important protections for player safety and health care and all those sort of things, that was always top of my mind, Schmidt said. The transfer issue, eligibility issues, optionality for pooling of media rights was always important. But also, if you're going to go through this and you're going to have the $21 million cap, then what you can do to retain players. We recognize that the market is much bigger than that because people are just shifting dollars away from rev share. And it's like these side deals that everybody knows are out there, and how you end up with rosters that are $50 million rosters. Like, if you're paying attention, that's what's going on. With that obstacle looming, what helped the working committee marshal the Big Ten and SEC support? The idea was to say, okay, we've got the cap, we've got the retention pool cap, we've got the women's sports $5 million that do not account against school-issued revenue sharing as outlined here. But how are we going to protect against that? And so Friday, the language was really like, okay, if you are Nike or whoever, Under Armour, and you've got a deal with a school, but you want a separate deal with the quarterback or the running back or the star linebacker, that if that was legit, if that was outside, that's a legitimate NIL deal. There's an attestation about that. It's going to go through the College Sports Commission review, which it should. That wouldn't count against the cap, but it can't be phony. There was that seemingly simple distinction that nudged across support. You just can't have a phony redirection like we've seen a lot recently, Schmidt said. I think once we did that, then people had greater assurance that this was a really real cap that's still allowing the individual NIL deals. I think that was important. And then I was asked to and had a lot of conversations with Petiti on Friday and Randy Levine, a key member of Trump's College Sports Advisory Council in the White House. And then I was on the SEC call at the end there, walking through these various provisions and why I just think now is the time to move. We're at a place where there is a real sense of urgency now in college sports, with what's going on in the trajectory. But our legislative calendar, like that's just the reality of the situation. There's just not going to be a lot of time for this beyond this coming week. The impending August recess, coupled by September's expected legislative priorities and October's midterms, Schmidt explained, made timing of this bill the second biggest element beyond the ability to finally gain sign-off from the Big Ten and SEC. I just think culturally, college sports is very uniquely American, and it brings us together, Schmidt said. What is happening right now is not sustainable. If you want to see those 500,000 scholarships out there in men's and women's sports, that won't be the case in 2 years. So I felt like we had to do it because our calendar, August is theoretically a recess. We could be there. I don't know. But September is going to be government funding debates. Then you roll into elections and you just don't know if you're going to get another shot at it. You just see this thing slipping away a little bit in college athletics. And if you kind of look down the road, it's a real risk. I was committed to it. You are listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 16 minutes after the hour.
We turn now to, of all things, women's professional baseball. I don't have to feel alone anymore. New Women's Pro Baseball League is looking like a movement. The author is Bob Nightingale. Too many times Kelsey Whitmore was so livid she wanted to scream to the heavens. Too many times Whitmore was so depressed she wanted to grab all of her baseball equipment and toss it in the ocean. Too many times she wondered whether life was fair, deprived her of love and passion for baseball simply because she's a woman. Then this happened, Whitmore tells USA Today Sports. I still can't believe it. This is the Women's Pro Baseball League, the first of its kind in more than 70 years, going back to the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League immortalized in the movie A League of Their Own. The mantra isn't a league, it's a movement. This 4-team league, which will play all of its 7-inning games at Robin Roberts Stadium in Springfield, Illinois, began its inaugural 30-game season August 1st. When I first found out about it, said Whitmore, age 28, I was in shock. I never thought a women's pro league would ever exist, not in the midst of my career. I'm super excited, super grateful that people like Keith would take a chance and see the value in it and invest in us. It's going to open so many doors and opportunities for young girls. I don't think people realize how huge this is. Has to be a girl go through the same drain as I did. Whitmore plays for the U.S. national team in the Women's Baseball World Cup. Grew up in Telemucca, California, where she was always the lone girl playing baseball on boys' teams, Little League, Pony League, travel leagues, high school. When she got to college, there was no place for her. She wound up receiving a scholarship to play on the Cal State Fullerton softball team. I didn't want to play softball, she said. I was upset by it. I wanted to play baseball. Softball is a completely different sport. It's like telling a tennis player to go play ping pong. It's like people had the belief we didn't belong in baseball, but now we arrived. I don't have to feel alone anymore. Keith Stein, the WPB co-founder, along with Justin Siegel, were emotional and wiped away tears watching the women's first official workout Wednesday. He's long been an advocate of women's sports, and his interest in the league was heightened by the documentary See Her, Be Her on women playing baseball around the world by Gene Fruth and Jeff Idelson, former president of Baseball Hall of Fame. I don't think I had any clue about the magnitude of what we were doing here, said Stein, a Toronto businessman. I knew people wanted to see women who wanted to play this game. What I didn't understand was how this league would resonate in a broader, symbolize certain things, not even about baseball. A lot of people have been disappointed or angry for a long time, seeing young ladies not have the opportunities to play in a women's league in high school or college or pro. We wanted to change that. That opportunity is finally here, and for the first time since 1954, the first all-women professional baseball league opened play between the Los Angeles Queens and the New York Heights on August 1st. The Queens scored 4 runs in the 7th inning to win 10-8. The Heights led 5-2 after the first inning, 8-4 after 4. Their final run coming on a home run by Danae Benites, who went 4 for 4. The San Francisco Fireballs and Boston Hunters were set to play Sunday. The 6-week season will be televised on ESPN with 11 games simulcast on the Scripps Sports Network. The teams are filled with star players, from Moeen Davis, who pitched a shutout in the Little League World Series, to Ayami Sato, considered the best female pitcher in the world, who won 6 gold medals with the Japan Women's National Baseball Team, and of course Whitmore, pitcher/outfielder, who won a silver medal at the Women's Baseball World Cup when she was 16, and a gold at the 2015 Pan American Games. I feel incredibly grateful and happy I can finally stand on the stage I once only dreamed about, Sato said in a text message conveyed by Fruth. To be able to play on this stage, a dream that once felt far away but became something I could truly see and believe in because of the people who supported me, means so much to me. I believe there are many players in the league who have carried the same dreams in their hearts, and I feel so fortunate and happy to be able to play alongside them. Teams are also being managed by former MLB stars. Matt Williams, a 5-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner, and 2014 Manager of the Year for the Washington Nationals, is managing San Francisco. Eric Young, an All-Star, coach 14 years in the big leagues, managing Los Angeles. Keith Falke, the All-Star reliever, closed out the 2004 World Series champion for the Red Sox, will manage Boston. And Rachel Rocky Henley, who founded San Francisco Bay Sox girls baseball program and played for the barnstorming Colorado Silver Bullets, will manage New York. Dave Stewart, the 4-time 20-game winner, 1998 World Series MVP, is an official advisor to the league. Everyone realized the magnitude of this movement when the league had a tryout camp last August at Nationals Park in Washington, D.C. There were 600 women from 10 countries who arrived, all paying their own expenses just for the opportunity to play professional baseball. Now here they are, first game at the 5,000-seat stadium, already sold out. Their original inventory of 20,000 caps were sold out in August of 2025. Can't keep enough merchandise on the shelves. We see the success we've already having without a ball being thrown, Stein said. There's money already coming in, but the money is completely secondary. I'm grateful to have the privilege to develop this league. There's nothing in business as meaningful as this. We want to leave a lasting impression and help change people's lives. The opening of the WPBL feels incredibly meaningful, said Fruth, co-founder of 2 nonprofit groups, Grassroots Baseball and See Her Be Here. Over the past 3 years, See Her Be Her has given me the privilege of documenting women's baseball around the world. What I'm most proud of isn't the women, it's the women taking the field and making this league a reality. What they're doing is bigger than baseball. Their impact reaches far beyond the game. Sure, no one's going to be rich playing in the league. The top salary is $500 a game. That includes lodging and meals. The minimum is $300 per game. Yet all that's important is that women are allowed to achieve their dream of playing professional baseball. Whitmer never got the opportunity to realize her playing dream with the San Diego Padres, wanting to be the next Jake Peavy, but she did play with Independent League Oakland Ballers and toured with the Savannah Bananas. It just never made sense to Whitmore that there were professional women's sports in basketball, hockey, and soccer, but not baseball. Women in baseball have been here all along, Whitmore said, but we weren't always being mid-directed. It's like, what do you do to have to play like men? And lastly, well, now a girl doesn't have to say there's no path for me to play baseball. We don't have to feel alone. We can look to my left, my right, not be the only girl. We have arrived. We are here. And we're staying here.
The following article will be the last from the sports section. The article is titled, "The NCAA is Fighting a New Fifth-Year Ruling." The article is written by John Bryce. The NCAA is taking aim and fighting back against a U.S. District Court judge's ruling that has temporarily granted a fifth year of eligibility to college student athletes from the high school class of 2022. In a letter obtained on August 1st by the USA Today, the NCAA outlined its intent to fight against the ruling of Judge Charlotte Sweeney, who presides over the U.S. District Court of Colorado. The District Court of Colorado's decision is egregiously wrong, NCAA Chief Legal Officer Scott Beerby wrote in a memo Saturday to the NCAA membership. The court's decision to certify nationwide class and grant sweeping injunctive relief with virtually no evidence and without witness testimony or even so much as a hearing invites further chaos in college sports and irreparably harms thousands of student athletes already on campus. 4 different college football general managers speaking Saturday on condition of anonymity due to the uncertain nature of this ruling and the potential impact to rosters, told USA Today that they have held informal meetings and begun the process of assessing potential roster additions from the group of senior football players whose careers ended with the 2025 season and had graduated in 2022. Additionally, multiple conferences, including the Big Ten and Pac-12 among others, dispatched information or answered questions that surrounded Sweeney's ruling. "We're prepared, and we are gathering a list," said a powerful conference general manager, "but we are not yet acting." Per the NCAA memo, its legal team also emphasized, per its viewpoint, that one U.S. court cannot override another court's prior decision in this method. The court has not yet entered an order specifying what it is purporting to enjoin, which is a requirement under the law, the NCAA memo continued. "We will seek that clarification immediately. But to be clear, one federal court cannot enjoin a sentiment approved and entered by another court. The House injunction remains in effect according to its plain terms." The Colorado court plainly lacks the authority to undermine the House injunction, which all of the plaintiffs in Colorado case are bound by, including the roster limits and revenue share cap. The NCAA then concluded its letter to the membership. "We intend to appeal the Colorado order and will seek to restore the status quo as soon as possible to protect participation opportunities for the countless student athletes who chose where to attend school based on the understanding that the rules adopted by the NCAA's member institutions would be applied as written. Schools and coaches must make their own independent decisions, but an injunction is intended to be short in duration, and the NCAA intends to appeal it on other expedited basis." The membership made a considerable decision about the timing of the age-based eligibility rule in order to protect competitive opportunities for thousands of student athletes already on campus. And finally, every federal circuit court to address similarly flawed legal claims and similarly deficient evidentiary record has reversed. You are listening to a reading of today's USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour.
This means we turn to the Life section of USA Today, and our first article is a review of fashion. Goddess Zendaya reinvents red carpet. The author is Morgan Evans. No one does a press tour quite like Zendaya. In one of her busiest years, with back-to-back releases, the star has shown the world how she makes the red carpet her runway. With the styling help of her longtime friend and image architect, Law Roach, Zendaya kicked off her year with her movie The Drama, creating a string of edgy, something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue looks to match its disastrous wedding theme. But her press tours for The Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day have been where she's really shined, taking the concept of method dressing to the next level. You'd think Zendaya fatigue might have set in, but each new look is new, on theme, and often unexpected. And while it can seem from a simplistic view like an actress playing dress-up, what you're really witnessing is a connoisseur of fashion exploring the medium as a true art form. It's intentional storytelling and a combination of craft and culture, and derived from Zendaya and Roach's unparalleled creative connection. Part of doing the press stuff is trying to make the clothes intentional, and is not just trying to pay homage, but gives little trails of ideas and thoughts, Zendaya said in an interview with D'Estrino. And maybe it's true, maybe it's confusing. That's the fun of it. We're revisiting all the looks that captivated us with a breakdown of why Zendaya's 2026 summer press tour will stand the test of time. If there's anyone who's mastered the art of runway pull, it's Zendaya and Roach. To kick off the Odyssey press tour July 5th in London, the actress donned a custom Jacquemus ivory column dress with an attached headscarf inspired by the silhouettes from the designer's spring/summer 2027 collection. Channeling the spirit of ancient Greece, the star accessorized the look with something old. A pair of first millennium gold accent discs owned by Baron London, mounted into earrings with 18-karat gold diamonds by designer Glenn Spiro. The next day for the Odyssey premiere in London, Zendaya wore a structured Schiaparelli gown plucked straight from Daniel Roseberry's Fall-Winter 2026 collection. The actress lit up the red carpet in the dress, which featured a sculpted glazed porcelain effect white breastplate with a signature Schiaparelli lace up back and an LED illuminated skirt made of cascading beaded fringe in a white and silver ombre. She topped off her Greek sculpture-inspired look with an 88-karat Chopard collared necklace in an ethereal halo braid hairstyle. The new look redefined new. Not only was Zendaya the first to wear one of the illuminated Schiaparelli sheaths on the red carpet, she did so just hours after the look went down the runway at Paris Couture Week. In an interview backstage at the Schiaparelli show, Roach explained he was on a mission to pick up the dress, bring it to London in time for Zendaya to wear it to the premiere that same evening. Zendaya's press tours balance those fresh looks with a deep dive into the archives to revive vintage pieces using Roach's deep knowledge of historical fashion. One example is her Audrey Hepburn-esque dress for the Paris photo call for The Odyssey, designed by Alexander McQueen for Givenchy's Haute Couture Spring-Summer 1997 collection. Featured a high neck with exaggerated pagoda sleeves and padded shoulders. Zendaya and Roach were also able to source the ornate gold face mask designed by Philip Treacy that originally was worn with the dress on the runway. Later for Odyssey Press in New York, Zendaya supported a white plunge-neck Alberta Ferreri mini dress from the Spring-Summer 2008 collection, featuring airy pleats and embellished with silver fringe. She accessorized the look with knee-high Webster cage sandals for a full gladiator-inspired look. For Spider-Man, in which Zayenda stars with husband Tom Holland, she and Roach searched the multiple cobweb-clad dresses. The actress channeled her inner Kiss of the Spider-Woman in everything from a form-fitting chiffon web gown for Versailles Spring-Summer 2016 collection to a black cap-sleeve 1940s cocktail dress embellished with a glittering silver spider web, a true vintage treasure. But two standout archival looks that the internet and the fans everywhere are abuzz. The film's Rome premiere, Zayenda was on the theme in a beaded spider web embellished gown from Armani's Spring-Summer collection, accessorized with dangling Tiffany and Company diamonds. This goes on and on. I think we'll cut it short. Zayenda and Roach's fashions are the stuff of legends, and just like the Odyssey, her most recent press tours will forever be epic.
The next article is also about a movie. The title is Adulting Can Be Hard, Even for a Guy Like Spider-Man. It is submitted by Brian Truitt. Tom Holland's superhero in Spider-Man Brand New Day is great at his job, but his personal life is at a low point. He grows distant from his friends and watches them live their lives over social media. He's also going through some things physically and is feeling quite out of place. It sounds a lot like what many people experience after their teen years. And that's why director Destin Daniel Cretton feels his latest Marvel movie in theaters now taps into something quite universal, how to deal with major life transitions. To me, it was always Peter Parker's ultimate coming-of-age story, Cretton says, of Spidey's unmasked alter ego. It's that time when real life just smacks you in the face, and what you thought was so easy to understand, the difference between right and wrong and good and bad, suddenly becomes very gray. You feel real loss for the first time, real tragedy for the first time, real loneliness for the first time. It's about adulthood. The answer to how you survive these major transitions is the other theme of the movie, learning to lean on the people around you who help keep your feet on the ground. The previous three Spider-Man movies followed Peter's high school years growing up in Queens with girlfriend MJ and best pal Ned Leeds, while also fighting supervillains solo and beside the Avengers. The ending of 2021's Spider-Man No Way Home, however, left our hero in quite a pickle. A magic spell to solve a multiverse crisis made the world forget Peter, including MJ and Ned. Cretton points to a few times in his own life after leaving college, going through a breakup, not having a job, feeling like I'm just floating in the wind, where the brain can really trick you into thinking that you're the only person on the planet who's going through these types of emotions, he says. The fact that literally nobody knows who he was, to me, a relatable place to start this character. An early scene in Brand New Day shows Peter's personal plight. He gets a key to the city as Spider-Man for all his everyday daring do, and he's seen twirling the key alone while doing laundry. When MJ and Ned move back to New York City as roommates after graduating from MIT, Peter quietly crashes their housewarming party. He sees Ned is still obsessed with Spider-Man, hatching a Spidey tracker app, and that MJ has moved on with a new boyfriend. Anyone who has ever run into a person they knew in high school who didn't remember them probably relates to Peter's pain. There's no worse feeling than feeling unseen, Cretton says. Everybody feels like that, even just throughout the day. Even somebody who clearly knows who you are, it's still easy to feel unseen by people. Complicating matters even further for Peter, in addition to a mysterious new supervillain who confounds him, is the fact that his body's changing. The arachnid DNA is starting to evolve and overtake his human side, presenting as an overloading of his super senses, blackouts that result in him waking up in weird web structures and a general feeling of being out of sorts with his abilities. Cretton used elements of body horror to viscerally depict Peter's troubles and leaned on his own influences. Teen Wolf was like my jam when I was young, he says. There's no better way to tell the story of growing up than with physical changes that you can't control, that make you feel like a monster. In many ways, Peter is fighting change in this movie. He is trying to control his life, and part of his journey is learning to accept that change is inevitable. And finally, there is a strong emphasis overall on mental health in Brand New Day, which is reflective of a new theme in Marvel movies. Last year's Thunderbolts also tackled loneliness as well as trauma and depression. I love watching these big spectacular movies when there's something about it that really relates to me and my personal experience, Cretton says. I don't know if that's going to become a fad, but I do hope that continues.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 41 minutes after the hour. We turn now to a music review. Mellencamp's Rebel Spirit fuels Hits Parade. The author is Melissa Ruggieri. Dateline, Bristol, Virginia. From the moment he strolled on the stage, cigarette dangling from one hand, guitar slung over his shoulder, John Mellencamp oozed authenticity. His midway through the amphitheater run, dubbed Dance World Tour, the greatest hits, a notable distinction considering many of the songs during his two-set 23-song concert hadn't been performed live much in years. But tucked amid timeless muscular gems including I Need a Lover, Cherry Bomb, and Rain on the Scarecrow, are a handful of album tracks that might not have lighted the charts, but were plucked from the catalog as rare treats for fans. One of them, 2014's Lawless Times, opened the 2.5-hour show, including a 15-minute intermission, and his Bourbon Street swing, coupled with Mellencamp's dry delivery, set the tone for a show he dedicated to all you misfits, all you mavericks, all you nonconformists. It was a fitting greeting because Mellencamp, age 74, has always been candid from the bratty John Cougar days in the late 70s and early 80s to the cranky elder statesman who never met an opinion he didn't want to share. At the July 29th stop at Jiffy Lube Live in Northern Virginia, Mellencamp and his tremendous 8-piece band, including multifaceted standout Crystal Taliaferro, who returned home to the guy who discovered her after decades playing with Billy Joel, romped and rolled through familiar terrain that never hurt so good. Here are some highlights. So many of Mellencamp's songs shuddered with sagacity, from rootsy strummers such as Small Town and Key West Intermezzo, I Saw You First, recast as acoustic ballad on This Night, or Barnburners, ROCK in the USA, and Paper and Fire. Mellencamp's grizzled visage is the perfect match to his husky voice that imbues songs such as Lonely All Night and Ain't Ever Done Nothing with the Night, with lived-in wisdom that seems even more palpable on stage. In his white t-shirt and black pants, changing to a black t-shirt for the second act, hair brushed back on the sides except for a stubborn forelock, Mellencamp frequently looked into the crowd to soak in the appreciation being thrust toward him. His playfulness was on prime display during this little ditty, Jack and Diane, which he performed solo, with only his acoustic guitar for backup. Teasing the eager-to-sing-along crowd for jumping into the song's chorus too early, Mellencamp exposed his impish charm as he conducted the chorus of voices. A primarily hits-filled concert always evokes songs that may have been forgotten. The "oh right, he sings that, too" phenomenon. But with Mellencamp, it's more of a memory jogger on how many treasured lyrics stem from his classic. He hit the highway from I Never Lead a Lover. Life goes on long after the thrill of living is gone, from Jack and Diane. I fight authority. Authority always wins, from the Authority song. And Ain't That America for You and Me, from Pink Houses. The last of that group is 1983 commentary on race and class disparity, often misinterpreted as a patriotic pablum. Has included commentary from Mellencamp during the lyric about vacationing down at the Gulf of Mexico. Mellencamp's remarks at the other recent shows about Trump's administration renaming the body of water the Gulf of America included some form that was stupid. The White House responded calling him an out-of-touch, woke Hollywood celebrity. At the Virginia show, Mellencamp was more muted, stopping the song to ask, "Didn't we change the name of that?" Boos from the crowd filled the air as he continued, "The Gulf of America. I think the Gulf of Mexico is better." The boos changed to cheers. Along with his status as a blue-collar rocker, Mellencamp also is a respected artist. Though the visuals for the show, a vintage movie theater, a burning field, lent polished edge, it was a delight to see many of Mellencamp's self-portraits scroll behind the stage during their sardonic pop singer. Interspersed with Mellencamp's idiosyncratic views of himself were old press shots of the singer, many without a shirt or showcasing pouts and flexed biceps that fit the song's wry message. And lastly, but the ensuing offering, Authority Song and Crumbling Down, were perfectly placed reminders of the rebellious spirit that had powered his career and how the heart of Mellencamp's music has always been his soul.
The next article is about a streaming media. It's titled On the Pitch and Off. Lasso roped season number 4. In the throes of a global pandemic, Apple TV's Ted Lasso premiered, buoying viewers by leaning into virtues not often center stage in productions, such as sentiments as hope, forgiveness, honesty, and the bold choice to believe that one's circumstances can change. But after 3 seasons and 34 episodes, the soccer dreamedy left the field. This article is written by Eric Jensen. In the season 3 finale on May 31st, 2023, Coach Lasso packed his visor and whistle and headed back to Kansas City to be with his son Henry after transforming the AFC Richmond team, owned by Rebecca Welton, Lasso's companion for biscuits, with a boss, sold a portion of the team to the public and heard a pitch from her best friend, PR extraordinaire Keely Jones, about a woman's team. "I certainly thought it could be done," Brendan Hunt, series co-creator who also plays offbeat Coach Beard in the series, tells the USA Today, "because by the time we finished season 3, we were very tired. And if I was tired, then I knew Jason had to be even more so, because the show takes even more of a toll on him than it does the rest of us." Sudeikis, Hunt, and Brett Goldstein, who plays Coach Roy Kent, are what sports fans call utility players, doing triple duty as writers, producers, and stars. Jason also got a lot of emotional places he got to go to on camera for this as well, says Hunt 54. So just the trappings of the structure of what it is and what our jobs are inherently just takes a lot out of you. But if Lasso has taught us anything, it's the power of hope. In February 2024, writers assembled at the Ojai Valley Inn, a resort 82 miles northwest of Los Angeles that once counted Clark Gable and Judy Garland among its guests. I was glad that we were doing that first because we also shouldn't just blindly jump into another season, Hunt says. We should make sure it's a good idea. They met to see how easy brainstorming ideas for season 4 would be. Jason was pretty sure at that point he wanted to do a women's team, but even then it was like, should it be the Richmond women's team? Should it be a team in America? Hunt says, we talked all those things through, and eventually we were like, no, the show's in Richmond. And we put the Richmond women's team there in that final montage. Let's follow that. We talked about a lot of big picture things and came away with the feeling, yeah, all right, there's enough here. The soil remains fertile, so let's have a go. Season 4, set to premiere on August 5th, picks up 3 years after leaving Richmond. Ted is now working as an assistant manager at a local grocery store in Kansas City. Though he might not be entirely devoted to his new career, it allows him to be a present dad for his son Henry. A visit from Rebecca Keeley and Leslie Higgins challenges that line of thinking. When this offer comes in, all of a sudden, of coaching the women's team, it starts to shine some light on the fact that if he is not being the best Ted he can be, then he is inherently not being the best dad he can be, Hunt says. Does part of being a good dad mean showing your child you're being the best version of yourself and you leaning into your mission, not just trying to make time for other people in your life, no matter how beloved or legitimate those people may be? So, Ted goes abroad to coach AFC's Richmond women's team, reuniting viewers with Kent, Coach Beard, pub owner May Green, and more. In June, Waddingham issued a metaphorical penalty card to outlets reporting on a feud with Sudeikis after speaking to Variety about his propensity for rewrites. On Instagram, Waddingham called the notion as ridiculous, according to Entertainment Tonight. Is it a quiet news day or something? Get a life. Sudeikis will be on that laptop trying to make the show better until the last possible second, Hunt says. And I think that has been one of the things that made the show the best show it can be. And that speaks to his Saturday Night Live background as much as anything, and sketch background. Hunt says Sudeikis, who joined Saturday Night Live as a writer in 2003 and became a cast member before leaving in 2013, believes, okay, we'll have a shot. We haven't shot at it yet, so we can still make it better. And we've been very fortunate to have a cast who are very agile at rolling with what we throw them at the last minute. Hunt and Sudeikis appeared in character during the FIFA World Cup final on July 19th to introduce Justin Bieber for the halftime show. During the surprise cameo, Sudeikis told Bieber, "Go out there, don't be nervous, nobody's watching, make us proud." Meanwhile, Hunt held up a modified substitution board with Bieber's initials on it and a yellow and blue Believe sign, a parody of the Believe reminder that hung in the Richmond locker room. And that cameo, Hunt says, was thanks to Coldplay's frontman. Chris Martin apparently called Jason back in February and said, "Hey, we're doing this halftime show for the World Cup final, and we think Ted Lasso should be in it," Hunt says. And just because Jason is the best friend in the world, he said, "Wow, well, if Ted Lasso's going to be in it, Coach Beard should probably be in it too, huh?" And finally, then suddenly, I was roped in, then had to sit on it as a secret for 5 months, Hunt adds with a laugh. At the rehearsal, Hunt calls it absolutely surreal to meet Bieber and fellow performers Shakira and Gustavo Dudamel of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. You try not to think about what it was while it was happening, and now it's just going to be this crazy-ass thing to look back on for the rest of time.
Our last article for today is titled, Latest Spider-Man Opens at $927 million. Dateline Los Angeles, Spider-Man Brand New Day brought $927 million in worldwide ticket sales, including $355 million in the United States and Canada, to deliver the second most lucrative opening weekend of all time for a film both domestically and globally. The movie, which marked actor Tom Holland's fourth outing at the web-slinging superhero, depicts Peter Parker fighting crime in a world that has forgotten he's Spider-Man. Isaiah Ghost stars as MJ, the love life. Did we read this, Tom? No, okay. The love of Parker's life. Audiences returned for a film that was grounded in Parker's struggles with loneliness and his pursuit of human connection. Spider-Man Brand New Day is fundamentally a movie about friendship, about the balm of connection of all of our lives, and that it resonates to audiences of all ages and all around the world, said Tom Rothman. Data from Rentrack indicates Spider-Man Brand New Day had the highest domestic gross opening since the COVID-19 pandemic and the second highest of all time in North America and worldwide. And the 2019 release of the superhero film Avengers Endgame. Internationally, Spider-Man Brand New Day grossed $572 million in opening weekend ticket sales, with China leading the international market with $121 million ticket sales, according to the studio. The latest installment has been well received, scoring a 90% rating from critics and 98% approval from moviegoers on Rotten Tomatoes. Paul Diggerini, head of the marketplace trends for Rentrack, said July 31st the franchise is approaching $10 billion mark in unadjusted worldwide theatrical box office. Performance of Spider-Man Brand New Day fuels an already robust summer box office, which has been buoyed by such major releases as Toy Story 5 and The Odyssey. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for the third day of August. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, please call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been Tom Scanlon and
David Hayes.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability